Professor Brain Brown's research shows that vulnerability fosters good emotional and mental health. It is a sign of courage. We become more resilient and brave when we embrace who we truly are and what we are feeling. The Vulnerable Scientist podcast is a space for scientists to tell their honest and authentic stories. I am your host, Sarah Nyakeri, who happens to be a scientist, informal science communicator, and I help scientists create personal websites. If you want to support this show, go to www.patreon.com/thevulnerable-scientist. You can also follow this podcast on all social media platforms at TV Scientist Pod.
My name is Dr. Ratemo. At the moment, I'm working at the National Biosafety Authority. I'm a biosafety officer. I've been working at this job. This is my third year now. And basically, what my organization does, or what we do, is to ensure or it's to regulate GMO trade in the country. Anything that comes into Kenya, which is being imported to Kenya or which is being exported has to go through us. So, in short, we regulate GMO trade in the country. Yeah.
Okay. For someone who doesn't know what GMO is, could you explain to them?
A GMO or GMO, it means something which is genetically modified. And genetic modification, we mean the altering of a genomic sequence. So by altering, we mean it can be a sequence can be added to the genome, it can be deleted, or it can be substituted. So when you do all these things on the genomic sequence, you are likely to cause a change in the phenotype.
Okay.
So when you do all these things, there's some characteristics now or features you're going to change in an organism. So basically, a GMO means something which has an altered genetic makeup. So that's what it means. And then there are several techniques you use. The most recent one is the CRISPR technique, which is the most. People who have used it, they say it's easy to use. So it's the one which is most, which is used in most experiments. The CRISPR technique.
Oh, so the CRISPR edited organisms are still classified under GMO?
It depends. These regulations, they vary from one country to another. So it depends the type of law, how the law, the type of law which is being applied in a specific country. So some countries, CRISPR can be able to edit a genome. Yes. So editing means you introduce a new sequence, you delete, or you substitute. So some countries, they say, for example, Japan, their law says that anything which has undergone the CRISPR, which has undergone genetic modification using CRISPR, it's considered a GMO. But other countries, they only consider it as a GMO when you introduce a new sequence. So other countries, when you substitute, they don't consider it as GMO. So it depends the law, how they have structured their law. But for Kenya now, we use the biosafety law to provide regulatory services. When you're using a CRISPR technology in your project, we consider it as a genetically modified organism. So we have to regulate it. So you have to come to us. You have to come to us with your application, and then we have to go through it administratively to make sure it's administratively and technically complete. and then we can advise you on subsequent steps to follow up to the time you are authorized to conduct experiments or your project.
Why do you need to regulate? Explain to someone who's not in science why there's a need to regulate.
There is a huge, regulating is very important to ensure there are no adverse effects to human health, animal health, and the environment. Because, for example, which example can I give? These are the precautions we put in place. I'll give an example of the precautions we put in place. For example, you are doing, you've genetically modified your maize variety, let's say variety A, and then you're trying to do experiments to try to see if the genetic sequence that you modified, is it eliciting the response that you want to see in the field? Yes.
Okay.
So the first thing you do is you do what we call as the experiment that they move from the laboratory, then again to the national performance trials, and then there's something we call commercial release. So in essence, when you have a GMO project and you've come to us, maybe you've developed a solution to let me say resistance to drought. Yes, let's say variety A. Yes.
Yeah.
So it has to go through some stages before it's approved for commercialization in the country. Okay. So it has to go through, you've done your lab work, then it has to come to us now to do the national performance trials. So we want to see what you are selling. Is this the same thing that which will be observed? Is your variety really drought tolerant? All right. And then when we are doing this, we do it in a secluded, I would say secluded area, like to avoid this genetically modified variety from mixing with the wild type varieties or the conventional varieties. So a crop like maize, we all know that it gets pollinated, yes? So there will be movement of pollen from some insects can move the pollen from plant to plant, yes?
Yes.
So you have to do it in a secluded area where you don't where there are minimal chances that this pollen will move from the GMO variety to the conventional varieties. You understand?
Yeah.
Because we want to see, because sometimes when you do experiments, maybe what you're trying to investigate, it may elicit unwanted responses in other plants, yes? So we want to do this, first of all, in a secluded area. All right? So something like maize, for example, it's a food crop, yes?
Yes.
So we don't want it to directly move, and then farmers will get the crop, and then they will plant it, and then people will just eat directly, yes? So we want to make sure that there are safeguards in place when you're doing GMO experiments.
Okay.
To avoid potential adverse effects on human beings, animals, and the environment. Okay? Yeah.
Okay, so until it is approved, that's when now it can be...
Until it's approved. Approval stage now is what we call as it has been approved for commercialization.
Okay.
Or we call it environmental release. It has been released to the environment. So it has to be taken through all these three stages.
Sorry, I'm asking you so many questions concerning this.
No,
there's someone who might be wondering, or might be having these questions. So, are there any products that have been released, that have been allowed to be, approved?
That have been approved for commercialization in the country?
Yes.
Yeah, there are several projects. Okay, up to now, the National Biosafety Authority has approved only one product for commercialization, which is the GM cotton. Or we call it BT cotton.
Okay.
I'm sure you must have seen in the media that the National Biosafety Authority has approved for commercialization purposes BT cotton. However, there are several projects which are undergoing national performance trials. So from the national performance trials, we will be able to see if they are eliciting or they are showing the features as that the principal investigators have indicated to us in their application. And then from there, we also check for the safety of the GM product which will be produced. So one of the things we check against, for example, to safeguard human health is if somebody is going to consume this, for example, GM maize, is it going to elicit an allergic response in people who consume this product? And then another thing also we check before it's approved for commercialization is the nutrient information. So it's supposed to be as similar as the conventional.
Okay.
All right. So that's how we make sure it's safe for consumption, because we don't want to approve a product that is going to cause problems in society, that's going to affect your health, that is going to elicit an allergic response, that is going to be toxic to you. So all these safeguards are in place to protect people, animals, and the environment from detrimental effects that can arise or may arise from GM technology.